So I was doing a little research and this article popped up and I want to say something and I don't know, it's not profound. America has become a war zone. We are a violent country. We do not look for peace. This whole article is kind of hinting at gun control as the panacea. It will fix everything. It's not, because if you get rid of... Look, if you have a violent society and you take away their firearms, they're going to get more violent. And you may say, well, if they don't have firearms, how are they going to shoot people? Here's what they'll do. They will find ways to get guns. And we have a problem right now on the southern border where everything is being smuggled in. Human beings, drugs, okay? Just two things. And add guns to that list like there are no guns in Mexico, right? No guns in South America. So you create an underground economy. That's all you'll do if you get rid of the firearms. Like you get rid of cigarettes. Guess what? There's guys out selling single cigarettes. You get rid of alcohol. People go berserk. Prohibition, remember? People are wanting to legalize more and more things that they want access to. If you take away firearms, especially for those who are law-abiding, who are not representative of what's happening in mostly large cities in the country. And by the way, this article never hints at, gee, the mayor of Chicago, she doing a good job? No. Okay. I mean, and by the way, this is across the board in places like Lancaster, Pennsylvania, Fort Worth, Texas. So it's not just in the obvious places, but in Chicago, 74 were shot, 14 killed in shootings over July 4th weekend. So, again, you've got the gun violence archive here. Probably a pro-anti-gun, whatever organization, pro-anti-gun, that doesn't make sense, but they probably want to ban firearms or at least restrict them and tell you can't have this kind of gun or that kind of gun. That has nothing to do with this. You know what? It is a false flag type concept to say if we just get rid of guns, then this won't happen. But you'll read this article and you say that's what they're trying to say. Gun-related violence. Not just violence, gun-related. It's gun-related violence. And this is a number that's like a wartime, like Fallujah type number, 140. Maybe we should bring the troops home and secure the cities. That sound very authoritarian? Well, at least, enemies foreign and domestic, right? So if we can't get our cities under control, and you've got 140 people who died from Saturday to Monday, those are wartime numbers. Those are greater than wartime numbers. And look, I understand, and they don't talk about, like, is it gang related? I mean, is it drug related? And my libertarian friends will make smart arguments. They'll say, well, if you legalize drugs, and do certain things, maybe there wouldn't be this underground economy. I am contending now something a bit and beyond this. I don't want to sound like the moralist here, but I'm going to anyway. Society is creating really awful human beings right now. All right, and there's no way around it. It is a good versus evil argument. Every time my wife and I start talking about this stuff, it always goes back to good versus evil. That's what it is, and right versus wrong. But we've ramped it up. It's good versus evil, and if you think that's a simplistic view of this, you'll always get there at the very end, and you'll think, well, okay, I don't really care at this point what the motive is. If you're willing to spray bullets everywhere and not care, then it's good versus evil. Now, they're talking about mass shootings here, and this is a little bit of a deceptive portion of this article. Because typically when you think of mass shooting, we think of some guy who walks into his former place of business and starts unloading, and this isn't that. this is when a bunch of people are getting shot because they're at the wrong place at the wrong time. And they go on. This portion of the article here makes me want to throw up. The spike, meaning the spike in violence, was a dark reminder that as normal life resumes in the country, so too does gun violence. So if we could just not go back to normal life, maybe we could curtail the gun violence. That is just a nasty, horrible sentence right there. That, gee, things were better. Things weren't as violent when, we were all locked down. The frequency of so-called mass shootings. Now, again, this is kind of a mischaracterization. It's funny how they use it here, but they'll emphasize, they'll always look for a motive at the other kind of mass shooting. I mean, they're trying to get motives even before, I hate to use this phrase, but even before the blood has dried. They are looking for the motive, all right? Because then they want to pin it on most likely somebody who they don't like, who the media doesn't like. And sometimes they're in such a rush to do that they get it wrong. Then they have to kind of backtrack, but they never apologize. They just kind of change up their narrative a little bit. It's really stunning, and it happens almost every time. But when it's this kind of just sort of generic, random, overwhelming violence, they never talk about motive. Well, what's the motive of the so-called, what's the motivation? Anyway, they go on to say the mass shootings, which involve numerous injuries or fatalities, had briefly subsided in the 15 months since the coronavirus outbreak. And movie theaters closed, and schools closed, and offices closed. But oh, my favorite, this is every time I see these two words next to each other, I'm just so happy. I'm just so happy I'm reading that article. The term experts warn. Doesn't that just warm the cockles of your heart? Experts warn that the return of frequent mass shootings is imminent. Experts know this. How do they know so much about this? And so what's the motivation? Is it just because they were locked down and now, I could see a lot of frustration, right? You lock a bunch of people, you could easily argue you lock a bunch of people down and those people get angry, and then when you let people back out, those people are getting their frustrations out, right? But again, back to my moral argument, my moralism, we are creating really awful human beings in larger numbers every day. And then we're telling each other to dislike one another for stupid reasons. We're dividing. But it's, this is beyond that, though. The people that are causing this violence, they're not living in our world. They're not living in our world. They're not living in any world that most of us can relate to. What we need to do is maybe bring the troops back and lock the cities down. We need to put this rebellion down, because that's what it is. It's a rebellion within our own country. And I firmly believe it's not authoritarian to bring the military in to stop violence, okay? Now, if it's a preemptive strike against, a group of people that are in a certain area that you think might do violence, no. You need to bring them out there as a security team and bring all the military hardware you need. Some of you libertarian types will never watch me again after I'm saying this, but you've had ongoing problems in Portland, ongoing problems in Seattle, in Chicago, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in Oakland, in New York City, more so than ever in New York City. It's just crazy there. But experts warn that the return of frequent mass shootings is imminent so long as weapons designed to kill people quickly and in large numbers are widely available. The gun control argument comes at you. Get rid of the guns and the problems go away. Get rid of the guns that kill people quickly and in large numbers. Interesting. So if you get rid of those, right, you get rid of them. Because again, every argument goes back to this, that we just cannot survive as a country unless we get rid of the firearms, right? Just get rid of them. Who's going to have them? Well, law enforcement will have them, right? Everybody who's worried about rogue law enforcement will still have them. And you don't think next to human beings and drugs that weapons will be the third or second thing on the list coming in from the southern border, which is completely wide open. This is another argument to secure the border. Illegal guns coming in. People go, where did this gun come from? South America, Mexico. Oh, well, we need to ban these. Okay, well, are you going to secure the border? No, of course not. We don't want to look like we're xenophobic. Okay, well, then you're going to have more people dying. Well, what if we ban everything? If you ban it, it doesn't go away. People will cite England and all this other stuff. America is a different continent. We are attached to other countries, right? And if we just look at our southern border alone, we have a different set of problems. If we were an island and you got rid of the guns and nobody could drop them out of airplanes or get them over on boats, you had, a flotilla around the island to protect it, your logic might carry some weight. And you might actually create a peaceful world and a peaceful society. But man, oh man, we're trying to always micromanage the behavior rather than the root cause of that behavior. And I'll keep saying it. We are producing some of the worst human beings in this country's history. The worst human, white, black, doesn't matter what color. I don't want to hear any arguments about race. That's not what this is about. This is about creating people who have nothing to live for and don't care and are looking for some kind of camaraderie with other people that want to do massive harm, and they don't have any regard for human life. So they go on here, they're trying to kind of compare this to last year. They say gun violence was up last year through the pandemic, even though they were... So toward the end of this, they're basically trying to cover for this, which says that, it was way better during the pandemic. But gun violence was still up last year during the pandemic, probably because of the pandemic. Even though there were fewer mass shootings, so that's why it's better. And nobody seems to notice who the president is now versus who the president was last year. No mention of that. No mention of the mayor in Chicago, who's completely out of her mind when it comes to this stuff. They talk about the clothing store owner in Philadelphia, right? Had a cookout. 100 shots were fired into the crowd, killing the 23-year-old store owner and another man. The shooting happened while fireworks were being set off, making it hard to know where the bullets were coming from. So those dang fireworks shouldn't have been let off. I mean, all weekend I had to hear about how crappy celebrating July 4th. And some people, libertarians now say, everybody says, oh, July 4th, it's a bad day. Okay, well, I don't know, celebrating independence from another country, that's what we used to do on July 4th. We used to appreciate what we have and be thankful for the country we live in. Everybody's angry at this country all the time. And yes, there are bad places in this country. There are bad leaders in this country. And quite honestly, there are a lot of bad people in this country who are complaining about other bad people. And the solution to the problem is to get off your ass and do something about it. As a person, care about your fellow man, woman, children, care about society. Get involved in your local community somehow. But the problems in these cities, what you can do here in the cities is manage the chaos and try to control it. And that's why I honestly think you might need military intervention. People would say, oh no, because once you start rolling military vehicles down the streets of cities, when is it that we try to prevent this for real? When are we going to try to prevent it? Are we ever going to try to stop it, or are we just letting it escalate, escalate, escalate? So 92 people were shot, 16 of them killed in what was the deadliest and most violent weekend this year in Chicago. This article said 14 were killed, so it went up to 16 apparently, and 92 versus 74. According to the Chicago Sun-Times, in the early hours Monday, a person driving past fired on a group hanging out in the park on the south side, killing 2 and wounding 2, including a 12-year-old girl and a 13-year-old boy. Nice that they're still using girl and boy in this article. The definition of a mass shooting differs by source, but the Gun Violence Archive defines it as an incident in which 4 or more people are shot, not counting the shooter, in roughly the same time and place. So I love how they categorize the shooting. Like, yeah, it's a mass shooting, but it's different from the politicized mass shootings that we see. See how that works? Kind of weird. If some dude walks into a church and starts firing, people automatically are trying to attribute a motive. Nobody here cares about the motive. And that's why my conclusion here is that we're, again, producing, our society is producing some of the worst human beings in our history. And they're causing all kinds of chaos. And then we've got a media that feeds this narrative, trying to divide us each and every day. And as I've said before, though, this has nothing to do with the world that these people live in. You have to take away that the world that they live in. This is more about self-defense at this point. This isn't about, say, initiating some kind of a takeover of the cities or whatever, but, you know, if the cities don't want the help, then guess what? It's going to continue to spiral out of control. And if the government doesn't see this as the real threat, remember they're always talking about extremism. Well, isn't this extremism? This is extremism. This is violent extremism, right? This isn't imaginary violent extremism. It's not the kind that you hear about, you know, through chatter, like a couple of patriot-type people are angry and think that the military should, you know, go in and be on their side or something to that nature. They're not doing any of this stuff. They're not going out and causing this mayhem. These are people who don't have a place in this world. And yes, we can do more to create a place in this world, but we have to recognize that it's still a battle between good and evil at the end of it. And if we're not willing to put a lid on the evil because we don't want to look like we're authoritarians, guess what? The evil will definitely continue. And these headlines will continue throughout this year and really for the foreseeable future. And it does matter, by the way, who your elected officials are. If they're not willing to deal with this because it looks bad for them politically, then they're cowards and they need to be voted out of office. But the people in that area, they need to do that. They need to make that change. And many of them are so brainwashed that they won't even attempt it. That's who they've always voted for, and they're going to continue to vote that way. And, you know, it's a way of life. Well, your way of life is causing some serious havoc across this country. You need people who are concerned about law and order. And as much as I want to be a libertarian and smiley face and say, oh, the police are evil. Yeah, some of the police are bad people. No question about it. Look at their working conditions, though, too. You have to put that into the equation. I mean, how long could you do this job without completely losing your mind?